Well, I'm back in ACC and it's pouring down. Today's Coach Dave GT3 Sprint at Suzuka on Low Fuel Motorsport is going to be incredibly difficult. Track conditions are treacherous, but at least I've got the advantage of being fairly well up the grid. I've qualified P7 out of 26 with a 202.3, which is within a second of Jay Hunter in pole position. However, these times were set in the dry, so I was not expecting a wet race. All I've done is swap dry tyres for wet and hope for the best. This will be a whole new challenge on Assetto Corsa Competizione. Let's try to survive it. Here we go then, the lights are green, we're underway, a step into the unknown at Suzuka. I was not expecting this downpour. As a result, I've got no idea where my wet braking points are. It looks like it's caught out a couple of drivers on the outside too. That was Jack Strumes and Sergej Belyakov, both running wide, so we've gained 2 positions at T1. We're up into the top 5. I really did tiptoe into that first corner. I was so nervous with the lack of visibility and the lack of grip. But that extra caution has paid off big time. We're already part of a breakaway pack at the front. There's a gap of more than 2 seconds back to Strumes in 6th position at the moment. Strumes was one of the drivers who couldn't get it stopped in time into T1. He started from 4th on the grid and he was joined out in the runoff area by Sergej Belyakov, who was P6. And astonishingly, it looks like we're continuing to break away. That gap now is nearly 3 seconds. So this is a far better start than I could have possibly imagined here at a wet Suzuka. I feared the worst when I saw the rain start to come down. Let's not get carried away. There are still 24 minutes of this race left, and in these conditions, anything can go wrong. And no sooner do I say that, we've lost the BMW ahead. Moffrey Seidel couldn't get it stopped into the hairpin. We're up to P4. Right, here's another look at T1. Watch the red and white Ferrari in 4th place. That's Jack Strumes. He is going to run it out way wide into the gravel. He pulls out Sergej Belyakov with him, and when that McLaren of Belyakov rejoins, it causes a massive traffic jam. That explains why we opened up such a gap in the early going. It promoted me from 7th up into 5th place, and then halfway through the lap I gained another position. Moffrey Seidel ahead of me can't get that BMW stopped under heavy braking into the hairpin, and he runs out into the gravel too. That promotes me up into P4. What a start! I'm certainly not going to get too carried away at this early stage of the race though. I know a lot of these drivers behind me are faster than me, but they're just pushing a bit too hard in the wet conditions. And speaking of pushing too hard, we've lost another driver. That was Alberto Del Rio running it out too wide at T1. We're up into the podium positions now. Del Rio has got back on track in 4th position, just ahead of Moffrey Seidel. So it remains to be seen just how long I can hold on to this position. But for now, we're going to jump forward to later in the lap, because I want to highlight another danger of these wet conditions that I hadn't considered. Track cut warnings. I'm going to get my first one here, running it out too wide through that right-hander.
Warning for exceeding track limits.
Yeah, with the track so slippery, it's going to be really easy to notch up a few of those warnings, so I'm going to have to be really careful there. And look how close Del Rio is in the rearview mirror now. He gained a load of time entering the hairpin, far more confident on the brakes than I am. He thought about challenging there. Now in the try, I've been experimenting with dropping my TC down to 4 to exit that hairpin a little bit quicker, but I'm not quite brave enough to try it in the wet yet. Maybe I'll have to, because we were clearly down on pace compared to that yellow Honda behind. But I've got to be sensible and I've got to be realistic as well. Del Rio is a lot quicker than I am, so we're going to jump forward to lap 3. Amazingly, I'm still maintaining that half-second advantage. But the pressure is starting to tell. I'm going to make my first mistake of the race, running it in a bit too hot into Degner. I just clipped the gravel on the outside. That compromises my line into the next right-hander, and I pick up my second track cut warning. That was really harsh. So I'm starting to look a little bit ragged here, and I've also dropped my TC down to 4 in the hope that I'll be able to get out of this hairpin a little bit quicker without even getting more sideways. It looks like we have done. That was a better exit, a smoother exit, and we've been able to fend off Del Rio, but I'm not sure for how much longer. It does look like Seidel in the BMW is struggling to keep up with us. He is now dropped to 1.5 seconds back. Oh, here's another mistake. I just get a slide on. Coming through Spoon Curve, that is not the place to start sliding because it costs you a load of speed down this back straight. We could be a sitting duck here. Del Rio is bound to have got a faster exit out of the corner, and he's also going to use some draft, but will he move alongside and try and move up the inside into 130R? If he does, I've got to be prepared for it, but he's not quite close enough. Oh, and I'm out really wide. I held my breath for a moment there. I didn't want to see another track cut warning come up. Thankfully, I think we've got away with it. I was still out of shape, though. I can't get the BMW stopped in time for the final chicane and run out onto the grass. This is surely going to give Del Rio the opportunity he needs to move up into third position. So yeah, I think simply put, I'm trying to drive beyond my capabilities in conditions I'm not experienced in. But before we see a replay of my mistake, let's go back to the start of the previous lap and see Del Rio make his own mistake. He can't get it stopped into T1. He's out really wide and he gives me third position. But yeah, by the time we got to the end of the third lap, I was looking really ragged. This was the latest in a string of mistakes, which ultimately cost me that podium position. Del Rio capitalises and goes past. Back into third, I'm down to fourth. Returning to the live action on lap 5, and it's no surprise at all to see Del Rio has cleared off. He's opened up a gap of more than 2 seconds in third position. Meanwhile, I've got company behind with Seidel. He's just 0.7 of a second back. Now, I'm trying just to settle down a bit and drive a bit more cautiously, but I'm still making mistakes. Once again, I'm wide through Degner, and once again, it's cost me big time in the right-hander under the bridge. This time, I'm out even wider into the gravel. It's cost me loads of speed, and Seidel is going to breeze by. Seidel up into fourth now, I'm down into fifth, and it could be sixth. Stuart Jameson in the yellow Ferrari having a look up the inside of the hairpin there. Thankfully I was able to close the door, but we are under even more pressure now. And it's pretty clear to see that that braking zone into the hairpin is costing me a load of time. Everyone else far more confident in these wet weather conditions. So I'm not sure how long I'm going to be able to hold Jameson off for. Meanwhile in front, Seidel's made a bit of a mistake coming through Spoon there. He was out really wide. It's probably not going to cost him too much speed because he was able to use it almost like a slingshot, but that'll probably earn him a track cut. Right, let's take another look at my woes on that lap. Once again, I'm wide into Degner, and once again, I run it in too hot into the following right-hander. I'm out really deep this time. Seidel doesn't need a second invitation to make that overtake. And keep your eye on the yellow Ferrari behind Jameson. He saw me make that mistake and wondered if he might have an opportunity to make a pass as well, but I just closed the door. That was really close. Right, returning to the live action at the start of lap 7. We're approaching 2/3 race distance and I'm still holding on to a top 5 position, but for how long? Stuart Jameson is applying all sorts of pressure behind. He's within 0.2 of a second. Now, I've been trying to drive smoothly and sensibly in these wet conditions. I've not made a mistake for a couple of laps, but unfortunately, I'm going to make a big one now through these S's. I just carry a bit too much speed, run it out wide, I get 2 tyres on the grass. I haven't lost the position yet, but it's put me under even more pressure from Jameson. Remember too that I'm hovering on 2 track cut warnings. I've only got room for 1 more, so not only do I have to deal with Jameson, I've got to try not to run wide. In fact, I think he's going to have the power to get past me before we even reach Degner here. He had a much better drive out of that corner. My line was completely off pretty much all through those S's. And yes, Jameson has made the pass. He is up into P5. We find ourselves down into P6. So I'm dropping backwards pretty rapidly here. The only consolation now is I've got a bit of a cushion to the driver currently in 7th, Skokiewicz. He is more than 5 seconds back. So we've only got 10 minutes of the race left. Hopefully I can hold on to this 6th position. Well, I wasn't able to keep in touch with Jameson or Seidel, and by lap 10, the pair of them were locked in a fantastic battle for P4. Seidel holding on to it at the moment, but Jameson applying all sorts of pressure. You can just see me in the background there. I'm about 3 or 4 seconds back by this point. But watch the yellow Ferrari of Jameson. He's been all over the rear of that BMW, but he's finally able to make the decisive move up the inside into the final chicane. That's Jameson up to 4th, Seidel in the BMW down to 5th. We're returning to the live action now at the start of lap 11. There are only 2 minutes left on the clock, so we're probably only going to get 1 more lap after this one, but I've not completely given up hope of getting back into the top 5. Seidel is now just 1.9 seconds ahead. Now remember earlier in the race, the track cut warnings I got through this right-hander. Watch Seidel, he's going to make exactly the same mistake, and he's going to be slapped with a drive-through penalty with 1 lap to go. So now I've got the comfort of knowing as long as I keep it on track, I should get a top 5 here. And as we end the penultimate lap, the question is Seidel going to take his drive-through penalty, or is he just going to be happy to take the time penalty and stay out on track? No, he's going into pit lane. He's taking the drive-through penalty, so we will move up into 5th position as we start the last lap. And boy, was I glad this was the last lap. Remember a few laps ago I said I had a 5-second cushion back to Skokic behind me. Well, look at that gap now. It's down to 1 second. Had this race been just 1 or 2 laps longer, I feel certain that Skokic would have caught and passed me to take that final top 5 place. But as it is, we're going to get to the checkered flag in the nick of time. The fireworks are out, the flares are out, and we cross the line to take 5th place. Not bad at all for my first ever ACC wet race on LFM. Well, I certainly wasn't the quickest out there, and I certainly wasn't the most skilled in the wet weather, but I drove sensibly, I drove safely. For the most part, I drove smoothly, and I got the reward, a top 5 finish. Now, in the past, I've always shied away from wet weather races on LFM. If I go to enter a race and notice it's going to be run in the wet, I tend to wait until an hour later when I know it's going to be dry. This one caught me out. The rain came after qualifying, but actually, it wasn't as bad as I feared, and I'm really happy with the top 5. That's one of my best results in LFM on ACC for a long, long time. Thank you for joining me for the ride. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, it's time to go and dry out. Cheers.